The entire holding bay trembled. A young predator cub, a whirlwind of claws and teeth, threw itself against the shimmering containment field. Metal screamed as its claws scraped across the surface. Handlers, their faces pale, instinctively backed away as red warning lights pulsed across the room. This cub was just a juvenile, but its lethality was undeniable. Its instincts were pure, raw, and completely unfiltered. Every attempt to calm or restrain it had been a catastrophic failure. They had tried sound dampeners, but the cub only screamed louder. They had tried pheromone mists, but it only moved faster, its body a blur of desperate energy. Its heart rate was off the charts, a frantic drumbeat of terror. Its muscles locked and released in violent, spastic cycles. It was a feedback loop of fear. The longer it stayed trapped, the more dangerous and unpredictable it became. Finally, the facility commander gave the order. Evacuate all non-essential staff. This cub was supposed to be, for later conditioning, a future asset, but it had been separated from its litter far too early, and the resulting stress had boiled over into a full-blown frenzy. Sedation was no longer an option. Its metabolism was too high, the risk of a fatal overdose too great. Any miscalculation now would end in bloodshed. Amidst the controlled chaos, a single human logistics officer stood near the doorway, almost invisible to the panicked crew. He wasn't a trainer. He wore no protective gear. He just watched the cub, his expression calm, unflinching. He wasn't seeing a monster. He was seeing a pattern. He noted the frantic, repetitive movements, the high, sharp pitch of its cries. This wasn't an act of aggression. The cub wasn't hunting. It was searching. Quietly, the man stepped away from the wall. He walked over to a nearby supply pallet and picked up an empty cardboard box. It was utterly ordinary plain brown, with bent edges and worn corners, the kind used for shipping and then discarded. No one understood what he was doing. Ignoring the shouted warnings from the handlers, he walked directly toward the containment field. The cub saw him approach and charged the barrier again, its entire body a projectile of fury. The field held, but it flickered and strained under the impact. The man stopped just outside the energy wall. He placed the box on the floor, then gently tipped it onto its side, the dark, open space facing the creature. His movements were slow, deliberate, predictable. He didn't rush. He didn't speak. The cub froze. Its frantic screams faltered, shifting from high-pitched panic to a series of sharp, confused clicks. It crept toward the barrier, its eyes locked on the box. Its tail, which had been lashing like a whip, slowed its frantic rhythm. A single paw lifted, pressing tentatively against the invisible wall. Wheat, his foot, the man gently pushed the box a little closer. Then, he did something no protocol would ever recommend. He stepped back, lowered himself to the floor, and sat down. His posture was loose, completely non-threatening. He didn't stare at the cub. Instead, he looked past it, at the far wall. The handlers stood frozen, their training useless in this bizarre standoff. The cub lowered itself to the ground, its face pressed right against the field, directly opposite the box. It sniffed the air. Its rapid, panicked breathing began to slow. The frenzy seemed to bleed out of its body, dissipating like heat from hot metal. The logistics officer reached over and slid the box through a small maintenance hatch, right into the containment area. The cub approached it cautiously, circling it once. Then, it shoved its head inside. A profound silence fell over the bay. The cub pulled the box over its body, curling up tightly within the flimsy cardboard walls. Only the very tip of its tail remained visible. On the monitors, the data shifted dramatically. Heart rate dropped into the safe range. Neural agitation vanished. Cortisol levels plummeted. The cub was no longer panicking. It was resting. The man stood, casually, dusting off his hands. He looked at the stunned commander and said simply, it needed a boundary, not control. A space that felt enclosed and owned. Something simple that didn't threaten it. Later, the training staff reviewed the footage. They realized the cub had never been aggressive by choice. It had been completely overwhelmed by the vast, open space of the bay, combined with the suffocating feel of the restraint field. The cardboard box gave it shelter without asserting dominance. It was a retreat, A den, just like the ones its ancestors would have used on Earth. The cub slept for hours. The incident was a turning point. Facility procedures were enrichment protocols were completely updated. Containment designs were changed to include small, voluntary enclosure spaces, and an ordinary cardboard box was officially logged as effective equipment. The logistics officer went back to his duties without another word. Months later, the cub grew into a stable, reliable asset, responding best to a calm presence and simple structures. The solution hadn't been stronger barriers or more advanced technology. It had just been a box. Thanks for watching.